This is Radio Health Journal. I'm Nancy Benson. This week, is there a genetic link between child prodigies and autism?
The individuals in the family with autism and the individuals with the prodigies, they both shared a mutation on chromosome 1.
The family link between autism and extraordinary talent, when Radio Health Journal returns.
When it comes to health insurance, understanding what you'll pay for covered services, prescriptions, and supplies is important, especially if you have a chronic condition like diabetes. Now, there's a new tool to help people with diabetes save money on test strips. Know My Copay is a website and nationwide telephone service that tells you the lowest copays for the top 5 brands of diabetes test strips in the market based on your individual health plan. Here's consumer advocate and nationally syndicated columnist Jim Miller.
Figuring out health coverage can be confusing. Know My Copay is a valuable free service that can help people maximize their healthcare dollar. By comparing the out-of-pocket cost of the various diabetes test strips available, people can make educated decisions about the products they use.
Know My Copay is sponsored by LifeScan, maker of One Touch brand blood glucose monitoring systems. Find the lowest copay for your test strips at knowmycopay.com or by calling toll-free 1-844-807-8936. That's knowmycopay.com.
In the performing arts world, experts have long argued whether natural talent or dedicated practice is most important in producing a virtuoso. It's the old nature versus nurture debate. But one young researcher set out to prove it's both these things and more. She interviewed dozens of child prodigies and made an astonishing observation, one that changed the direction of her research altogether.
The very first prodigy I ever interviewed got tired of testing, and he said, "Miss Joanne, I don't want to do this anymore." And so I said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And he said, "I want to go to McDonald's." And I said, "Well, let me ask your mother." And it was while we were sitting there eating our Happy Meals that his only maternal male cousin came in, and he was severely autistic. And I thought, oh, what are the chances that we have a prodigy, which is 1 in 5 million, maybe 1 in 10 million, and a severely autistic cousin in the same family. And so I started to think of ways to explore that in the more prodigies that I interviewed.
That's Dr. Joanne Ruthsatz, Assistant Professor of Psychology at The Ohio State University, and author of The Prodigy's Cousin, the family link between autism and extraordinary talent. As she says, true prodigies are extremely rare. Approximately 1 in every 5 to 10 million people. However, a diagnosis of autism occurs in about 1 in 88 individuals. Ruthsatz interviewed 30 prodigies and their families and uncovered astonishing coincidences.
Over half the families had at least one member with autism. Some of them had several members with autism. There's several families where there's more than one autistic individual. I would say out of the 30, probably about 5 of the families had more than one autistic individual. And when they had more than one, some of them had up to 4 individuals with autism. And these are close relatives, their brothers, their cousins, their uncles.
Behaviorally, the linkage makes sense. Ruthsatz says autists, and particularly savants and prodigies, share many of the same characteristics.
They are prone to exceptional memories. They both have a repetitive behavior, or which Alan Weiner calls a rage to master. They both are within families where autism runs at a high rate. So if you have one autistic child, the chances of you having a second are 5%.
However, prodigies aren't overwhelmed by stimulation. Autistic people are.
Savants are individuals who have a spike in a certain skill, which actually mirror the same skills that the prodigies usually present in art, music, math, and chess. But the prodigies don't have any deficits. They don't have social skill deficits. They don't have communication deficits. The savants have problems with daily living. When we talk about it in prodigies, like attention to detail or these unbelievable memories or anything else that the rage to master, we talk about them as strengths and talents. But when we talk about the same things in autism, we talk about them as deficits. People say that individuals with autism are insensitive to other people's emotions. I think they're super sensitive to other people's emotions, as my prodigies are, and that it is so overwhelming to them that they shut down, but not the prodigies. They bleed benevolence.
Ruth Satz says that typically an autism diagnosis has been based on behavioral deficits, but now she believes there may be a genetic component.
You have to have a deficit in social interactions, in language, and repetitive behaviors with a narrow range of interest. I think it points to that they have a genetic moderator that we found on chromosome 1, that the individuals in the family with autism and the individuals with the prodigies, they both shared a mutation on chromosome 1.
With that in mind, Ruth Satz collected DNA samples from both the prodigies and the autistic relatives and sent them off to McGill University for analysis.
We are looking for what I'm calling the moderator gene that allows the talent that's associated sometimes with autism to shine through without the deficits.
If Ruth Satz's theory is correct, and the DNA of prodigies does show a so-called moderator gene, she's hoping that a drug treatment for autism could eventually be developed to mimic the effects of this moderator gene.
Maybe if we can find the genes that the prodigies have that block that, we can develop a treatment or a medicine that will also block those receptor sites.
But not all experts are convinced that Ruth Satz's conclusions are viable, simply because there aren't enough prodigies in the world to study. In order to prove a theory, other researchers would have to be able to replicate Ruth Satz's results hundreds of times to be proven scientifically.
My understanding is that the type of analysis that was done in the Prodigy and Autism Project, the linkage analysis, traditionally you would need a significantly higher number of families in order to be really confident in your results. In autism, when we did linkage analysis back in the 2000s, in the 1990s, we had samples of several hundred families. I imagine that it's going to be really hard to find that sample of families that have prodigies and children with autism.
That's Dr. Jennifer Gertz, Assistant Professor of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at the University of Washington, and an attending psychologist at the Seattle Children's Autism Center.
Linkage analysis are more focused on families that have a certain type of disorders or a certain disease of interest to look to see how some of those genetic contributions might kind of flow amongst family members. And so it requires full families to participate. And the studies in autism that used linkage used several hundred families of families that had multiple children affected with autism. And those were done probably about 10, 15 years ago for the most part. So we had pretty large sample sizes. And actually, even though there were some potentially interesting findings, they were extraordinarily difficult to replicate across research groups.
However, Gertz admits that if Ruth Satz can indeed prove a link between autism and prodigies, it could open the field for autism research in a profound way.
That's actually where we've made, in autism, in the kind of broader field of autism, that's where we've made a lot of headway in understanding the genetic underpinnings of the disorder by looking at genetic errors or genetic abnormalities, like maybe a rare mutation, like maybe some change to one gene that causes the gene to not function the way that it's supposed to. Or maybe there's a deleted piece of genetic material or a duplicated piece of genetic material. And those same mutations or deletions or duplications are found in a child with autism, and the exact same one is found in their cousin that's a child prodigy. Now that's interesting. That could potentially kind of guide a genetic explanation, perhaps, for the similarity.
If you're interested in learning more about gene research in autism, or would like to participate in research studies, you can find more information at bernierlab.edu. You can learn more about our guest, Dr. Joanne Ruth Satz, and her book, The Prodigy's Cousin, by visiting our website at radiohealthjournal.net. Our writer this week is Polly Hansen. Our production director is Sean Waldron. I'm Nancy Benson.
Radio Health Journal returns with medical notes in just a moment.
Do you know someone diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia, or AML? AML is a type of cancer that begins in the bone marrow, but in most cases quickly moves into the blood. It can be difficult to treat, particularly for those who have changes in certain genes, as their cancer may come back quickly after being treated. There is currently no standard treatment for relapsed AML. However, there are ongoing clinical research studies. If you know someone who has AML, particularly if they have a mutation called FLT3-ITD, and have relapsed or failed to respond to chemotherapy, they can learn more about a clinical research study called Quantum-R. Call and speak to a study coordinator at 1-844-432-3892 or visit quantumrstudy.com to learn more and see if you qualify for this research study. Again, the number is 1-844-432-3892.
Medical notes this week. Suicide is one of America's top 10 killers, and a new report shows the suicide rate is rising sharply. A report from the Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention shows that suicides are up by nearly 25% since 1999, and the rate of increase has been gaining speed since 2006. Women are more likely to attempt suicide than men, most often by poisoning, but men are more likely to complete it because they use more deadly methods such as firearms. Hangings are also on the increase as a suicide method. Older people who are physically active have a better quality of life, and they can make strength training part of their exercise plan. A study in the journal Preventive Medicine shows that people over 65 who do strength training at least twice a week have a 46% lower risk of death for any reason than those who didn't do strength training. And finally, studies done on mice are the bedrock of medical science, but a couple of new publications cast doubt on how applicable those studies might be to humans. The first, in the journal Trends in Cancer, notes that mice are kept in labs that are much chillier than animals would prefer. Mice like temperatures about 85 and 90, and lower temperatures in the lab change how their bodies function. The second study in the journal Cell Host and Microbe notes that lab mice are usually kept infection-free, which isn't like the real world either. Researchers say mice with abnormal antibodies might skew the results of studies. And that's Medical Notes this week. More in a moment.
For many people with diabetes, maintaining proper blood sugar levels can be challenging and time-consuming. But now getting a snapshot of your diabetes just became a lot easier with the AccuCheck Connect Diabetes Management System. With test results automatically sent to an app on your smartphone and an online portal, the AccuCheck Connect system lets you log, view, and share data anytime, anywhere without ever writing it in a logbook. You can view results, easy-to-understand trend graphs, and securely store your diabetes management data in the cloud to access it from your mobile device or desktop. With the Connect system, you now have the tools to see the big picture wirelessly. Plus, you can text results if desired, attach meal photos, and view trends on the system's dashboard. You can even use the app's insulin calculator to enjoy a meal without the math. The AccuCheck system is available at Walgreens. Find out more at accu-check.com/connect.
Thank you for listening to Radio Health Journal, a production of MediaTrax Communications. If you enjoyed this week's show, please leave a review on iTunes or share it with a friend. You can find more Radio Health Journal stories about health, science, and technology on iTunes, Stitcher, and at radiohealthjournal.net.